The stars were supposed to be silent. For thousands of years, the Federation had believed that somewhere beyond the final frontier, there were limits. Limits to technology. Limits to power. Limits to what any single being could become. They were wrong. Because tonight, the universe was not facing an invasion. It was facing a war between beings who could tear reality apart simply by deciding to fight. Superman stood above Earth, staring into a sky that had turned completely black. Beside him, Thor raised Stormbreaker as lightning crawled across the heavens. Wonder Woman tightened her grip on the lasso of truth. Hulk roared beneath them. Doctor Strange opened portals across dimensions. And somewhere beyond them all, beings who had once been considered gods watched the Federation's final hour approach. Then Captain Picard heard something impossible over the Enterprise bridge speakers. A voice. Not from a communicator. Not from subspace. From reality itself. Jean-Luc Picard. Every officer on the bridge froze. Picard slowly turned toward the view screen. What do you want? The stars disappeared. And the voice whispered, choose who will fight for your Federation. Because if Picard chose wrong, Earth would not be conquered. It would cease to exist. What would happen if the Federation became the one cause powerful enough to unite the strongest beings in fiction? And what if even they discovered there was something they could not defeat? The answer would begin with a single distress signal. The Enterprise E was 3 hours from entering Federation space when the signal appeared. There was no warning. No distortion. No encoded transmission. One moment, the bridge was filled with the soft hum of warp travel. The next, every console went dark. Picard rose from his chair. Report. Commander Riker stared at his tactical display. I've got nothing. Nothing? No stars. No sensor readings. No warp signature. Picard looked through the main view screen. The Enterprise was still moving. But outside, there was nothing. No stars. No planets. No nebulae. Just an endless black ocean. Then a single point of light appeared. It grew. Closer. Larger. Until the bridge was filled with the image of a man floating in space. He wore a red cape. His arms rested at his sides. His eyes were fixed directly on the Enterprise. Riker whispered, who the hell is that? Picard did not answer. The man moved toward the ship. No shuttle. No suit. No life support equipment. He simply flew. The Enterprise's shields activated automatically. The man stopped several meters from the hull. Then, somehow, Picard heard his voice. I didn't come to fight you. Picard stepped toward the view screen. Then who are you? The stranger looked toward Earth. And for the first time, fear appeared in his eyes. I'm Superman. The bridge went silent. Picard had heard stories of impossible civilizations. He had encountered beings capable of manipulating matter, energy, even time. But Superman was different. Picard could feel it. This was not merely strength. This was restraint. The terrifying kind of restraint possessed by someone who could destroy far more than he ever intended to. Why are you here? Picard asked. Superman looked back at him. Because something is coming. Suddenly the ship shook. Red alerts erupted across the bridge. Impact. Riker shouted. The view screen fractured into dozens of sensor windows. Picard grabbed the railing. What happened? Something just crossed our shields. Enemy vessel? No. Riker's face went pale. It's a person. Before anyone could respond, the turbolift doors opened. A thunderous boom rolled through the bridge. A man stepped out wearing armor that seemed forged from lightning itself. Thor. He looked around the bridge, gripping Stormbreaker. Captain Picard. Picard stared. You know me? Thor smiled grimly. I know the stories. Then another portal opened. Doctor Strange stepped through. Behind him came Wonder Woman. Then Green Lantern. Then Captain Marvel. Then Hulk. One after another, impossible beings from impossible worlds appeared aboard the Enterprise. Picard looked at the gathering. Why are you all here? Strange slowly removed the cloak from his shoulders. Because every universe that has ever encountered the threat knows the same thing. Picard's expression hardened. What threat? Strange looked at Superman. Superman looked at Thor. Thor looked toward the stars. And Wonder Woman quietly answered. The one that eats universes. The bridge fell silent. Picard stared at them. How much time do we have? Doctor Strange closed his eyes. 26 minutes. Riker swallowed. Until what? Strange opened his eyes. Until the Federation disappears. For the first time in his career, Jean-Luc Picard had no immediate response. Not because he was afraid. Because he understood the scale of what he was hearing. The Federation had fought the Borg. It had survived wars with the Klingon, Romulans, Dominion, and countless other civilizations. But those enemies had wanted territory, resources, power. This enemy wanted nothing. It did not negotiate. It did not conquer. It consumed. And now it was approaching Federation space. Picard turned toward the gathered heroes. If you're capable of stopping this thing, then why come here? Superman stepped forward. Because we can't. Picard's eyes narrowed. You're telling me that Superman, Thor, Wonder Woman, Doctor Strange, and whatever other beings are standing on my bridge? He looked around. Cannot stop it? Strange shook his head. We tried. Picard looked at him. Where? Strange's face became grim. In other universes. A holographic display appeared above the bridge. Entire galaxies appeared. Then vanished. One by one. A universe filled with countless worlds. Gone. Another. Gone. Another. Gone. Picard watched in horror as the display showed civilizations disappearing faster than the computer could identify them. Then one final image appeared. The Federation. The Enterprise. And a black shape approaching from beyond reality. Picard whispered, "What is that?" Strange answered, "We don't know." Thor stepped closer. "We have called it many names." Superman's jaw tightened. "The Void." Wonder Woman shook her head. "The Devourer." Doctor Strange stared at the image. "But its true name," he paused, "is something the human mind was never meant to understand." The bridge lights flickered. Then every screen simultaneously displayed the same symbol. A circle. Inside it was a single vertical line. Picard recognized it immediately. Not as a language. As a warning. "What does it mean?" Strange looked at him. "It means it has found you." At that exact moment, the Enterprise dropped out of warp. Not because Picard ordered it. Because something had grabbed the ship. The stars outside suddenly bent inward. Space folded. The hull screamed. Riker shouted, "We're being pulled." Picard grabbed his chair. "By what?" The answer appeared beyond the view screen. A massive shadow emerged from the darkness. It was too large to be a ship. Too complex to be a creature. It seemed to have no shape at all. Its surface shifted constantly, revealing glimpses of dead galaxies trapped inside it. Thor raised Stormbreaker. Superman flew toward the view screen. Green Lantern created a barrier. Wonder Woman drew her sword. Hulk clenched his fists. Doctor Strange began speaking words no human language could contain. Picard watched them prepare. Then he saw something that disturbed him. Superman was afraid. Not worried. Not cautious. Afraid. Picard stepped forward. "Superman." The Kryptonian turned. "Can we stop it?" Superman looked toward the approaching darkness. Then he said something that no one on the bridge expected. "Maybe." Picard stared at him. "Maybe?" Superman nodded. "But only if the Federation does something it has never done before." "What?" Superman looked directly into Picard's eyes. "Trust us." The Enterprise shook violently. The shadow opened, and from within it came billions of voices screaming across every frequency at once. The Federation's entire communications network activated. Every starship, every colony, every station, every world. They heard the same message. Not from Starfleet. From the darkness. "Your universe has been selected." Picard looked toward the view screen. "For what?" The darkness answered. "Extinction." And then the first wave arrived. Not ships. Not soldiers. But realities. Thousands of alternate Earths appeared around the Federation border. Some were burning. Some were frozen. Some had never developed humanity. And some contained beings even stronger than the heroes standing aboard the Enterprise. The strongest beings in fiction had arrived. But they were not alone. Because from one of those alternate realities stepped a figure that made even Superman turn pale. A figure wearing a black suit. A silver emblem across his chest. Eyes glowing like dying stars. Picard looked at him. "Who is that?" Superman whispered the answer. "That's the version of me who lost." The stranger smiled. And the war began. But nobody yet understood the most terrifying truth. The enemy had not brought the strongest beings together to destroy the Federation. It had brought them together. Because it wanted them to fight each other first. Do you want me to continue? What if the Federation's greatest defenders were forced to fight the most powerful versions of themselves? And what if the first enemy they had to defeat was the person Superman could have become? The first explosion did not come from the darkness. It came from Superman. The alternate Kryptonian moved so quickly that even Thor barely saw him. One second he stood beyond the Enterprise. The next he was inches from the original Superman. The impact shattered the surrounding vacuum. A shockwave rolled across space, slamming into nearby ships and throwing smaller vessels into uncontrolled spins. Superman crossed his arms just before the second strike landed. The sound that followed was impossible. It was not the sound of fists colliding. It was the sound of two forces colliding that had no right to exist in the same reality. "Who are you?" Superman demanded. The darker version smiled. "You already know." He struck again. Superman was thrown backward. "I'm you." The words echoed through the comm channel. Picard stared at the tactical display. "Riker, how many ships are in the engagement?" "Over 400. "And how many are ours?" Riker hesitated. "All of them." Picard understood immediately. The alternate realities surrounding them were not simply attacking. They were being positioned. The Enterprise sat at the center of a growing battlefield containing versions of worlds that should never have occupied the same piece of space. A Federation ship from a reality where the Borg had won. A Defiant commanded by a Vulcan who had never learned the meaning of mercy. A Klingon fleet whose warriors had become genetically engineered weapons. A Starfleet armada whose admirals had embraced authoritarian rule. And alongside them came heroes. Hundreds. Thousands. Different versions. Different histories. Different choices. Different definitions of justice. Picard watched one screen showing Wonder Woman battling another version of herself. On another, Green Lantern fought an alternate Lantern whose ring had been corrupted by the same darkness consuming the battlefield. And above everything, Hulk and Thor had become living storms. Thor hurled lightning through a formation of black ships. Hulk smashed one vessel in half. Then something hit Hulk from behind. A second Hulk. Then a third. Then a fourth. The bridge crew stared in disbelief. Riker whispered, "How many are there?" Picard answered quietly, "Too many." Doctor Strange suddenly appeared beside them. "Captain." Picard turned. "What is it?" Strange looked exhausted. "Those aren't reinforcements." He pointed toward the battlefield. "They're echoes." Echoes. Versions of every decision that could have been made. Picard frowned. "You're saying we're fighting possibilities?" Strange nodded. "And every possibility is real now." A chill ran through Picard. The implications were staggering. Every moment of history. Every choice. Every regret. Every victory that could have happened but didn't. The enemy had ripped those possibilities out of the multiverse and given them bodies. Picard looked toward Earth. "How do we stop something like that?" Strange did not answer immediately. Then he said, "We don't." Picard turned sharply. "What?" "We stop the reason it can exist." Strange raised one hand. A transparent image appeared between them. At first Picard saw nothing. Then he noticed it. A tiny fracture. A crack extending through space itself. "What's that?" "The wound." "The wound caused by the enemy?" "No." Strange's eyes hardened. "The wound caused by us." Picard stared. "You mean the heroes?" Strange nodded. "Every universe creates boundaries. Laws. Rules. Connections. The more powerful beings cross those boundaries, the more strain they put on reality." Picard looked toward Superman. "You're saying we caused this?" "Not intentionally." Strange turned toward the alternate Superman. "But every time someone here crossed from one universe to another, the damage grew." Picard's eyes narrowed. "So the strongest beings gathering together is actually making the situation worse?" "Yes." Picard looked back toward the battlefield. "And the enemy knows that." Strange smiled bitterly. "It's counting on it." A tremendous flash lit the bridge. Superman's darker counterpart had driven the original Superman through 3-kilometer-long starship hulls. The Kryptonian rose from the wreckage. Blood ran from the corner of his mouth. The alternate Superman descended slowly. "You always believed power meant responsibility." The original Superman wiped the blood away. "It does." "No." The darker version shook his head. "Power means control." His eyes began glowing red. "When I realized that, everything changed." Superman stood. "You hurt people. I saved them. You ruled them. I ended war. You destroyed their freedom." The alternate Superman smiled. "And what did your freedom accomplish?" The question struck harder than the punches. Around them, entire fleets continued fighting. Civilizations burned. Worlds trembled. The darker Superman pointed toward the Federation. "Look at them." Superman turned. "They're fighting because they have freedom." Then he pointed toward a Federation starship. "Too many choices." Another ship exploded. Too many opinions. Another. Too many chances for evil. Superman clenched his fists. You don't believe that. The alternate version leaned closer. I didn't. Pause. Until I watched my world die. Superman's expression changed. For a moment, neither attacked. Because beneath the armor, beneath the anger, beneath the power, there was grief. The same grief, just processed differently. Then a voice interrupted them. Enough. Thor appeared between them. Lightning exploded from Stormbreaker. Both Supermen were thrown apart. Thor landed heavily. You have fought long enough. The darker Superman stared at him. And who will stop me? Thor raised his weapon. I will. The alternate Superman laughed. You believe a god can stop me? Thor's eyes flashed. No. A grin appeared across his face. I believe a god can keep you busy. Thor charged. The battle that followed shook the surrounding dimensions. Superman watched as Thor and his alternate self traded attacks so powerful that nearby ships were forced to retreat. Then Superman heard a familiar voice through his communicator. Clark. It was Lois. His heart stopped. He had not heard her voice since arriving. Lois. Static. Then. Clark, listen to me. Superman's face went pale. Where are you? I don't know. Her voice trembled. But I can see everything. Superman looked around. What do you mean? I can see the worlds. Lois. And Clark. She paused. There is a world where you never became Superman. Superman closed his eyes. What happened? You died before you could save anyone. He opened his eyes. Another? There is one where you ruled Earth. His gaze shifted toward the alternate Superman. And another? Lois inhaled sharply. There is one where you became something worse than all of them. The transmission abruptly cut. Superman's expression changed. He looked toward Dr. Strange. Did you hear that? Strange nodded. Then his face turned grim. She's still connected. Connected to what? Strange looked toward the giant fracture in reality. To the source. Picard's voice came through. Doctor. Strange turned toward the Enterprise. Captain? You said the Federation has to stop the reason this thing can exist. Yes. Then tell me where to strike. Strange stared at him. Captain, I don't think you understand. Picard remained calm. Then explain it. Strange looked at the Federation fleet. The enemy isn't outside our universe. Picard's expression hardened. Where is it? Strange pointed down. Inside. The bridge went silent. Picard slowly looked toward Earth. You mean it is already here? No. Strange shook his head. It's been here for centuries. Picard frowned. What? Strange stepped closer. The Federation didn't attract this war. He looked toward the stars. The Federation has been building the conditions for it without knowing. Picard stared at him. How? Strange answered quietly. Every encounter with a higher dimensional being. Every temporal incursion. Every transport through unstable subspace. Every attempt to communicate beyond the universe. Every time your civilization reached for something it didn't understand. He paused. You widened the door. Picard's mind raced. The Q. The Borg transwarp network. The Nexus. The Guardian of Forever. The Iconian gateways. The Traveler. The Prophets. Entities and technologies that had stretched the boundaries of existence. All of them connected. All of them leaving traces. Picard whispered, the Federation has been punching holes in reality. Strange nodded. And something has been watching from the other side. The bridge suddenly shook. Every screen turned white. Then a single sentence appeared. You have opened the door. Picard stared at the message. Riker turned toward him. Captain? Picard straightened. Red alert. Riker blinked. Against what? Picard looked at Strange. Strange looked toward Earth. And far across the solar system the moon began to crack. Not from an attack. From the inside. A black light emerged through the fractures. Then another. Then thousands. Picard watched in horror as shadows crawled across the lunar surface. They assembled. Taking form. Bodies. Armor. Faces. An army. But not an alien army. A Federation army. Starfleet uniforms. Starfleet weapons. Starfleet insignia. Thousands of soldiers stood upon the moon. Every one of them dead. Picard could not breathe. Riker whispered, those uniforms? Picard nodded. I know. Strange stepped toward the view screen. No. Picard looked at him. What? Strange's eyes widened. That's not an army. What is it? The Federation's future. Suddenly, every dead soldier on the moon turned their heads toward Earth. In perfect unison. Then they spoke. Every voice identical. You failed. Picard stared. One figure stepped forward. His face was older. Scarred. Wearing the uniform of a Starfleet admiral. Picard recognized the rank. He recognized the insignia. But not the face. The man raised a weapon. Then spoke directly to the Enterprise. Jean-Luc Picard. Picard moved closer. Who are you? The stranger smiled. I am what remains after your Federation wins. The entire bridge froze. Picard whispered, what? The future admiral lifted his weapon. You think this war is about survival? He looked toward the gathering heroes. It is not. Then he pointed toward the fractured sky. It is about deciding which universe deserves to survive. Superman flew back toward the Enterprise. Picard. What? Superman looked genuinely alarmed. We have a problem. Picard stared at him. I know. No. Superman shook his head. You don't. His eyes turned toward the Earth. They found the source. The entire planet suddenly went dark. Not nighttime. Dark. Every light across Earth disappeared. Cities, ships, stations, satellites, everything. Then a pulse traveled outward. Earth's atmosphere turned silver. Superman's expression changed. He whispered, it's waking up. A deep sound rolled through space. Not an explosion. Not thunder. A heartbeat. Boom. Every hero stopped fighting. Boom. Every ship lost power. Boom. Every star in the sector flickered. Boom. The fracture across reality opened wider. And from beyond it came a single eye. An eye larger than planets. Watching. Judging. Waiting. Picard stared at it. For the first time he understood what the enemy had been doing. It had never wanted to destroy the strongest beings. It wanted to gather them. Because their power was the key. Their conflict was the fuel. And their arrival had finally given the ancient entity exactly what it needed. The eye opened. And reality screamed. Then the voice came. You brought your strongest. Pause. So I could become stronger. The Enterprise shook violently. Dr. Strange's face went pale. Thor lowered Stormbreaker. Wonder Woman looked toward Superman. Even Hulk stopped roaring. Picard slowly stood. Can it be defeated? Nobody answered. Then Superman looked at Picard. There may be one way. Picard waited. Superman continued. But you're not going to like it. What is it? Superman looked toward the Federation fleet. We have to send every one of us away. Picard frowned. Where? Superman looked toward the black eye. Into the thing itself. And somewhere inside that impossible darkness, something laughed. What if the only way to save the Federation was to send its greatest heroes directly into the thing that could erase entire universes? And what if that monster had been waiting for them to enter all along? For several seconds nobody moved. Outside the Enterprise, the impossible eye remained open. It filled half the sky. Behind it was no face, no body, no recognizable structure. Only darkness stretching beyond dimensions, as though the universe itself had become a wound and something enormous was looking through it. Picard stared at Superman. You're saying we should enter that? Superman nodded. Picard's voice remained calm. And how exactly does entering a thing that consumes universes save the Federation? Dr. Strange answered before Superman could. Because its center is the only place where the rules become simple. Picard looked toward him. Simple? Strange gestured toward the view screen. Everything outside that entity is constantly changing. Time, gravity, dimensional structure, causality. We can't predict what will happen here. He pointed toward the black eye. But inside. He paused. There is a source. Thor stepped closer. A heart. Wonder Woman shook her head. Not a heart. Green Lantern raised his ring. A weakness. Strange looked at all of them. A choice. Picard frowned. What does that mean? Strange's expression darkened. It means the entity is not invulnerable. It is dependent. Dependent on what? Conflict. Silence. Strange continued. Every powerful being who enters the battlefield brings possibility. Every alternate version creates another branch. Every battle creates more energy. Every disagreement between realities feeds the entity. Superman understood first. The war itself is making it stronger. Yes. Picard looked through the view screen. The Federation fleet was still surrounded. Thousands of ships. Thousands of heroes. Millions of lives. All right, he said. Then we stop fighting. Strange shook his head. It's too late. Picard looked at him. Why? Strange pointed toward the black eye. Because it has already absorbed enough power to become aware of us. Another pulse crossed the fleet. Starships flickered in and out of existence. One moment a cruiser was there. The next it became older. Then younger. Then completely different. Riker stared at his tactical screen. Captain? Picard turned. What? The fleet is changing. What kind of change? Every ship is becoming a different version of itself. Picard looked toward the view screen. A Federation flagship transformed into a battered warship covered in weapons. Then into a diplomatic vessel. Then into a ship he had never seen before. The same thing happened across the fleet. The enemy was rewriting them. Picard looked toward Superman. How long? Superman closed his eyes. I don't know. Thor raised Stormbreaker. Then we make our stand now. Wonder Woman stepped beside him. We cannot abandon these people. Captain Marvel flew forward. We don't have to. She looked toward the Enterprise. We divide the fleet. Picard understood. Half stays. The others looked at him. Half enters the entity. Strange nodded. That may be enough. Picard turned toward Riker. Open every channel. Riker hesitated. Every channel? Every one. Riker activated the Federation-wide communications network. Picard stood at the center of the bridge. His voice traveled across thousands of worlds. To every starship, station, colony, and citizen of the Federation. He paused. For centuries we have believed the universe was something we could explore. He looked at Superman. Then Thor. Then Wonder Woman. Today we have learned that the universe can look back. The fleet listened. We are surrounded by forces beyond anything our weapons were designed to fight. A tremor shook the Enterprise. Picard continued. But we are not going to surrender our future to fear. On Earth millions watched. On distant colonies children looked at screens. On Vulcan, elders stood silently. On Andoria warriors gathered. On countless worlds Starfleet personnel listened. Picard's voice became stronger. Our greatest strength has never been our weapons. Pause. It has been our ability to stand together when the impossible stands against us. Superman smiled faintly. Picard continued. So today we ask something more difficult than courage. He looked around the bridge. Trust. The fleet began responding. One ship. Then another. Then hundreds. Enterprise, this is the Akira group. We're with you. Defiant to Enterprise. Ready. Voyager to Enterprise. We stand with you. A Klingon commander appeared on screen. Captain Picard. Picard raised an eyebrow. The Klingon smiled. Today we fight beside you. Picard nodded. Thank you. Then another voice. Vulcan. Then Andorian. Then Bajoran. Then Romulan. Then Cardassian. Species that had once been enemies were answering the call. The Federation was no longer merely a political alliance. For this moment, it became something much larger. A collective refusal to disappear. Picard turned toward the gathered heroes. Let's go. Doctor Strange opened a portal. But before anyone entered, Superman stopped. Wait. He looked toward Earth. Picard followed his gaze. What is it? Superman's expression was strangely peaceful. I can hear someone. Who? My parents. Picard's eyes narrowed. Your parents. Superman nodded. Not the ones from this universe. A second voice emerged from the communicator. Lois. Clark. Superman grabbed the transmitter. Lois. I found where the voices are coming from. Where? Inside. She paused. And Clark. What? They aren't trapped. Superman froze. What do you mean? They're waiting. Strange suddenly turned toward her voice. What are you hearing? Lois answered. Thousands of voices. Whose? Everyone who ever died. Strange's face went pale. He looked at Superman. That changes everything. Picard demanded, why? Strange answered softly. Because if the dead are inside, then the entity isn't consuming them. Picard stared. What is it doing? Strange's voice dropped. It's storing them. Nobody spoke. Superman stepped into the portal. Then we're going in. Thor followed. Let the monster keep its treasures. Wonder Woman entered next. Green Lantern followed. Captain Marvel. Hulk. Doctor Strange. And finally Picard. Riker caught his arm. Captain. Picard turned. Don't? Riker shook his head. You don't have to do this. Picard looked at him. Yes. But who commands the Enterprise? Picard smiled. You do. Riker looked stunned. Picard leaned closer. Get everyone home. Then he entered the portal. Reality disappeared. For a fraction of a second there was nothing. No sound. No light. No gravity. No body. Picard didn't know if he was falling or standing. Then, he opened his eyes. He was on Earth. But not his Earth. The sky was red. The buildings were abandoned. Snow covered the streets. He looked around. Doctor Strange? No answer. Superman? Nothing. Picard reached for his communicator. Then a child's voice came from behind him. Are you Captain Picard? He slowly turned. A young girl stood in the street. Perhaps 10 years old. She wore a Starfleet uniform. Picard stared. How do you know my name? She smiled. Because everyone does. Who are you? The girl looked toward the horizon. I'm the last person from my universe. Picard's expression softened. What happened? She pointed toward the sky. He came. Picard looked upward. The red clouds began moving in a circular pattern. Something enormous shifted behind them. The girl stepped closer. He said he wasn't going to hurt anyone. Picard looked down at her. And did you believe him? The girl shook her head. My father did. What happened to him? He joined the army. Which army? The girl pointed toward the horizon. And Picard saw them. An endless procession. Starfleet uniforms. Thousands upon thousands. Marching through the ruined city. The dead future Federation. Picard felt a chill. The girl whispered. They're looking for you. For me? She nodded. They've been waiting a long time. A voice came from behind the army. Captain Picard. He turned. The future admiral stepped into view. Older. Scarred. Eyes filled with exhaustion. Picard recognized him now. Not from history. From instinct. This was a future he had never seen. A future created by the choices he had not yet made. The Admiral looked at Picard. You shouldn't have come. Picard stepped forward. Who are you? The man stared at him. Then removed his helmet. I was once Jean-Luc Picard's successor. Picard frowned. My successor? The Admiral nodded. I served the Federation for 52 years. And what happened? The man's expression broke. We won. Picard stared. You're saying the Federation survived? Yes. Then why does this place look like this? The Admiral looked around. Because survival wasn't the same thing as victory. Picard's eyes narrowed. Explain. The Admiral stepped closer. We defeated the enemy. Picard looked toward the sky. No. Yes. The Admiral's voice became bitter. We fought the strongest beings in existence. We fought cosmic gods. We fought multiversal armies. We even defeated the thing you now call the Devourer. Picard's voice was quiet. Then why are you here? The Admiral answered. Because we became it. Picard said nothing. The Admiral continued. To defeat the entity we absorbed it. Strange's earlier words suddenly returned. A choice. A source. A heart. The Admiral looked directly into Picard's eyes. The Federation became the new guardian of the multiverse. Picard frowned. That sounds like victory. It wasn't. Why? Because guarding everything means deciding what survives. The Admiral pointed toward the marching dead. We began choosing. Picard felt a knot tighten in his chest. Choosing what? Which worlds were too dangerous? Which timelines were too unstable? Which civilizations could be trusted? And eventually, the Admiral's voice cracked. Which lives were worth saving? Picard stared at him. You became what you fought. The Admiral nodded. Yes. Then he looked past Picard. Toward something approaching through the red sky. But that isn't the worst part. The sky opened. A massive figure descended. Not the Devourer. Not a god. Not an alternate Superman. A Federation officer. Wearing white armor. Carrying a Starfleet insignia. The Admiral lowered his head. Picard turned. Who is that? The Admiral whispered. The first captain. Picard stared. The first captain of what? The figure landed. The ground shattered beneath him. He looked directly at Picard. The last Federation. Picard felt his blood run cold. Then the figure spoke. You have brought the strongest beings in existence into my domain. Picard stood his ground. We came to destroy you. The figure smiled. No. His eyes turned black. You came to replace me. The world exploded. Picard was thrown backward. Superman appeared from the smoke, catching him before he struck the ground. Picard. Picard coughed. Where are the others? Separated. Strange. Searching. Thor. Fighting. Wonder Woman? Looking for the source. Picard looked toward the enormous Federation figure. And that? Superman stared. I don't know. The figure raised one hand. The entire battlefield stopped. Thousands of dead Starfleet officers froze. Superman couldn't move. Picard couldn't breathe. Even Superman's body began to shake. The figure walked closer. You came here believing strength would save your Federation. He looked at Superman. You were wrong. His gaze shifted to Picard. Strength is what destroyed mine. Picard managed to speak. Then why are you still fighting? The figure smiled. Because I have already seen how this ends. Picard stared. What happens? The figure leaned closer. You win. Picard froze. Superman looked at him. The figure continued. You defeat me. Pause. You destroy the Devourer. Another pause. And then, his eyes burned black. You become me. Before Picard could answer, a thunderous roar erupted in the distance. Thor appeared through the clouds. Stormbreaker was glowing brighter than Picard had ever seen. Behind him came Wonder Woman. Then Green Lantern. Then Hulk. Then Doctor Strange. The strongest beings had found each other. But Strange looked terrified. He pointed toward the ground. Everyone stop. Picard turned. What? Strange knelt. He placed one hand against the earth. Then whispered. This isn't the center. Picard looked around. What do you mean? Strange rose. His face was pale. We're not inside the entity. Superman looked at him. Then where are we? Strange stared toward the red sky. We're inside a memory. Silence. A memory of the future? No. Strange shook his head. A memory of the Federation. Picard's eyes widened. Whose memory? Strange looked toward the black-eyed Federation officer. Hers. The officer smiled. And the entire world changed again. The ruined Earth vanished. The dead disappeared. The red sky collapsed into darkness. And suddenly Picard stood inside a vast chamber. At the center was a single chair. Beside it stood a woman in an ancient Starfleet uniform. She looked at Picard. Then smiled. Jean-Luc. Picard knew that face. It was impossible. Yet he knew it. His mother. But not as she had been. As she could have been. As someone who had lived for centuries. She stepped closer. You finally came home. Picard stared at her. This isn't real. She touched his face. No. Her eyes became black. But it remembers being real. Then the chamber began filling with voices. Millions of them. Every captain. Every soldier. Every civilian. Every hero. Every villain. Every universe. Every version of every life. And one final voice rose above them all. A voice older than time. Choose. Picard looked around. Choose what? The answer came from everywhere. Which universe deserves the Federation? Superman stepped forward. There is no correct answer. The voice laughed. There is always a correct answer. Doctor Strange suddenly understood. He looked at Picard. This is the real battle. Picard turned. What battle? Strange stared at the millions of trapped possibilities. Not whether the Federation survives. Pause. Whether the Federation can survive without becoming a god. The voice spoke again. You have one choice. The chamber split into countless doors. Each door showed a different reality. A peaceful Earth. A conquered Earth. A Federation ruled by Superman. A Federation ruled by Thor. A Federation without humans. A Federation without Starfleet. A universe where the Borg had never existed. A universe where there had never been war. A universe where everyone lived forever. And one final door. It showed nothing. Picard stared at it. What is behind that door? The voice answered. Nothing. Why is it there? Because sometimes. The door began opening. Saving everyone requires accepting that you cannot save everyone. Picard looked at the strongest beings around him. Superman lowered his head. Thor tightened his grip. Wonder Woman closed her eyes. Strange stared into the void. And Picard finally understood the enemy's greatest weapon. It wasn't power. It wasn't fear. It was temptation. The temptation to become something greater than human. The temptation to decide the fate of every world. The temptation to remove choice itself. Picard stepped toward the empty door. Superman grabbed his shoulder. Don't. Picard looked at him. Why? Because I think I know what's inside. Picard waited. Superman stared into the darkness. Nothing. Then why are you afraid? Superman's eyes filled with tears. Because if we choose nothing. He looked at Picard. We choose not to become gods. Picard nodded. The black-eyed Federation figure suddenly screamed. You cannot choose that. The chamber began collapsing. Every reality shattered into fragments. Strange shouted. Picard. Thor raised Stormbreaker. Captain? Wonder Woman reached for the lasso. Make the choice. Picard looked at the empty door. Then at the Federation. Then at the heroes. And finally, at himself. He stepped forward. He reached for the door. And somewhere beyond existence, the Devourer screamed. Because for the first time in eternity, someone had discovered the one thing it could not consume. Choice. But before Picard could open the door completely, a hand reached through the darkness and grabbed his wrist. A familiar hand. A human hand. Picard looked down. The person holding him was smiling. It was Jean-Luc Picard. Older. Scarred. Broken. And wearing the uniform of the final Federation. The future Picard whispered. You're about to make the same mistake I did. The door slammed shut. And the strongest beings in existence realized they had just been trapped inside the mind of the one man who had already lost the war. What if Jean-Luc Picard had to fight the one enemy no cosmic powerhouse could defeat? His own future self. And what if that broken version of Picard already knew exactly how their war would end? For a moment, Picard could only stare. The man standing before him had his face. Older. Thinner. Scarred by decades that Picard had never lived. His hair was nearly silver, his eyes hollow, and the uniform wrapped around his body was unlike any Starfleet uniform Picard had ever seen. The insignia remained. But the colors were darker. The badge had changed. Instead of the familiar delta, there was a symbol Picard didn't recognize. A closed circle. Surrounded by 13 stars. The future Picard looked at him with something more painful than anger. Pity. You don't understand what you're doing, he said. Picard slowly pulled his wrist free. Then explain it. The future Picard turned toward the endless chamber. You think this is a prison? Isn't it? No. He looked toward Superman. This is a warning. Superman stepped forward. You've been controlling these realities. The future Picard shook his head. I've been containing them. Thor moved beside Superman. Containment is often another word for imprisonment. The future Picard looked at him. You would know. Thor's grip tightened around Stormbreaker. What does that mean? The future Picard smiled faintly. You have no idea how many Ragnaroks there are. Thor's expression changed. Explain yourself. In some universes you die. The future Picard pointed. In others Loki wins. He pointed again. In others you become king. Then to another distant door. In one there is no Thor at all. Thor stared at the shifting realities. The future Picard continued. Every version survives somewhere. He turned back toward the original Picard. And every surviving possibility creates another war. Picard's voice was low. So you decided to control them. I decided to stop the cycle. How? The future Picard looked directly at him. By becoming the Federation's final authority. Picard's face hardened. That's not the Federation. The older man smiled. That is exactly what I used to say. Silence. Then Superman stepped between them. You're lying. The future Picard looked at him. You think I don't know you? Superman frowned. I know every version of you. The future Picard lifted his hand. Around them the chamber transformed. Suddenly Superman was standing in front of a burning city. Metropolis. But not his metropolis. There was no sun. The sky was black. Buildings were shattered. Millions were dead. Superman looked around. No. The future Picard spoke. This was your failure. Superman stared. What happened? You saved the world. Pause. Then you tried to save every world. Superman saw himself floating above Earth. Thousands of worlds surrounded him. His eyes glowed white. His hands were raised. Each time he saved one planet, another collapsed. He looked horrified. The future Picard's voice continued. Every time you interfere with another universe, you shift the balance. Superman turned. You manipulated those realities. I didn't create them. The future Picard stepped closer. I simply showed you what happens when heroes believe they must save everyone. Superman's fists tightened. There has to be another way. The future Picard stared at him. There always was. Then why didn't you find it? The older Picard's face became cold. Because we ran out of time. A tremor shook the chamber. Doctor Strange immediately looked upward. Something is wrong. Picard turned. What? Strange pointed. The chamber was changing. Not reacting to them. Reacting to something outside. The walls began filling with cracks. Black light leaked through. Strange whispered. It's getting in. The future Picard looked genuinely frightened. Picard noticed. You're afraid? The older man slowly nodded. Yes. Of the Devourer? No. He looked toward the cracks. Of what comes after it? The first scream echoed through the chamber. Then another. Then thousands. The strongest beings turned toward the sound. A figure began walking through the black light. Tall. Armored. Carrying a massive sword. Not Superman. Not Thor. Not any being Picard recognized. But something about the figure made Strange immediately raise his hands. Don't let it touch you. Picard asked, what is it? Strange's expression was grim. A possibility. A possibility of what? Us. The figure stopped. Its helmet opened. Underneath was not one face. There were thousands. Each one shifting every second. Superman. Thor. Wonder Woman. Hulk. Picard. Captain Marvel. Strange. Every powerful being gathered in the battlefield. Combined. The future Picard stepped backward. No. The creature spoke. Every voice at once. You fought me in every universe. Thor raised Stormbreaker. What are you? The creature smiled. We are the result. Moved. Thor struck first. Lightning exploded across the chamber. The creature absorbed it. Green Lantern constructed a massive barrier. The creature walked through it. Hulk charged. The creature caught him with one hand. Wonder Woman's lasso wrapped around its arm. The creature pulled. She flew toward it. Superman intercepted her. They crashed against the chamber wall. Doctor Strange opened 30 portals simultaneously. Now. Captain Marvel flew through one. Superman through another. Thor through a third. They attacked together. For a moment, the chamber became a storm of impossible power. Lightning. Heat vision. Magic. Cosmic energy. The lasso of truth. Green Lantern constructs. Hulk's rage. Every attack struck the creature. And none of it mattered. The creature looked at them. Then spoke. You still believe power determines victory? It raised one hand. Every hero froze. Picard felt his lungs stop working. The air disappeared. The chamber began compressing. Superman's face strained. Thor dropped to one knee. Hulk roared helplessly. Wonder Woman struggled against invisible pressure. Picard could barely move. Then the future Picard shouted. Stop. Everything froze. The creature turned toward him. The future Picard stepped forward. I know what you want. The creature's many faces smiled. No. You want us to fight. No. You want us to destroy each other. No. The creature stepped closer. I want you to understand. The future Picard's face changed. Understand what? That there was never a war. Silence. The creature raised its sword. There was only a test. It struck the ground. The chamber shattered. Everyone fell. Picard landed on an enormous metallic surface. He looked around. A starship bridge. His bridge. But abandoned. Ancient. Destroyed. The future Picard was standing at the command chair. This is the beginning. Picard stared. What? The day everything changed. The older Picard activated the main view screen. The image appeared. Well, peaceful. Beautiful. Then a Federation ship appeared near the planet. The Enterprise. Not Picard's Enterprise. An earlier one. Then came another vessel. Unknown. Massive. Its hull was black. Picard leaned closer. What ship is that? The future Picard answered. The first contact vessel. Picard frowned. With what? With the entity. The screen changed. The black ship opened a portal. A beam of energy struck Earth. Millions died instantly. Picard stepped backward. That never happened. It did. In your timeline. In every timeline that eventually produced this war. Picard stared. Who built that ship? The future Picard didn't answer. Instead he looked at Superman. You. Superman stepped forward. What? You helped them. Superman's expression hardened. I've never seen that ship. You weren't born yet. Then why are you blaming me? Because the idea came from you. The future Picard touched the display. A schematic appeared. Superman recognized the design. It resembled Kryptonian technology merged with Federation engineering. His face fell. No. The future Picard nodded. The Federation found a way to combine alien energy with Starfleet propulsion. Picard stared. And opened a stable gateway. Yes. To where? The future Picard answered. Outside the universe. Dr. Strange closed his eyes. Picard whispered. The door. Yes. The future Picard looked toward him. The door you were about to open. Picard felt the weight of the realization. The Devourer had not invaded. The Federation had contacted it. But that wasn't the worst revelation. Picard turned. Who opened the first gateway? The future Picard finally answered. You. Picard stared. I never did. Not yet. The future Picard stepped closer. You will. Why? Because in your timeline, the Federation reaches a point where exploration isn't enough. He paused. You want to know what's beyond the final frontier? Picard shook his head. Curiosity doesn't justify this. The older man smiled sadly. You'll tell yourself it doesn't. He leaned closer. But you will open the door. Picard's expression hardened. Then I won't. The future Picard stared at him. That's what I said too. Behind him, Superman turned toward Dr. Strange. Can he really change it? Strange was silent. Superman frowned. Strange. I don't know. You're the Sorcerer Supreme. I can see possibilities. Then look. Strange looked at Picard. He closed his eyes. For several seconds nothing happened. Then blood began running from his nose. He opened his eyes. And whispered. There are 14 billion futures. Picard stared. How many do we win? Strange looked at him. None. The room fell silent. Superman's expression broke. None? Strange shook his head. Not as we understand victory. Thor stepped forward. What does that mean? Every future where we destroy the Devourer. Strange swallowed. Create something worse. Hulk growled. Worse? Strange nodded. In one future, the Federation becomes a multiversal empire. In another, Superman becomes its guardian. In another, Thor becomes its eternal king. In another, magic controls every civilization. In another, Starfleet becomes an interdimensional police force. Wonder Woman lowered her sword. And the people? Strange's voice softened. They become subjects. Picard closed his eyes. The truth was becoming unbearable. Every solution led somewhere terrible. Every attempt to protect the Federation risked transforming it into something monstrous. The future Picard walked toward him. Now you understand. Picard opened his eyes. No. The older man stopped. Picard continued. I understand the trap. What trap? You've convinced yourself there are only two options. The future Picard stared. Which are? Destroy everything. Or control everything. The older Picard said nothing. Picard stepped closer. There is another. What? We refuse. The future Picard laughed. Refuse what? To become gods. The laughter stopped. Picard looked at the strongest beings surrounding him. We don't need to control every reality. He turned toward Superman. We don't need to save every possibility. Toward Thor. We don't need to defeat every enemy. Toward Wonder Woman. And we don't need to guarantee every future. Finally he looked at the future Picard. We only need to protect the freedom to choose one. The older Picard stared. And for the first time, he looked uncertain. Then the creature returned. It stepped from the shadows. You are too late. Picard turned. The creature's thousands of faces were smiling. The first gateway has already opened. Picard's blood ran cold. Where? The creature pointed behind him. The view screen changed. Earth appeared. Not an alternate Earth. The Earth. Federation Earth. The planet was surrounded by a glowing ring. An enormous gateway had formed above it. Starfleet ships were trying to evacuate. The moon was breaking apart. The atmosphere was glowing. And in the center of the gateway, something was emerging. A hand. Massive. Black. Ancient. Superman stared. No. Thor raised Stormbreaker. By the gods. Dr. Strange whispered. That's not the Devourer. Picard looked at him. Then what is it? Strange's eyes widened. The thing that created it. The black hand reached farther through the gateway. The creature smiled. We have spent eternity fearing the hunger. It looked toward the opening. But hunger was never the master. Picard stared into the gateway. What is that? The answer came as the hand wrapped around the edge of reality. Creation. The gateway exploded. A voice older than the universe spoke through every communicator. Every mind, every starship. I remember you. Picard froze. The voice continued. I remember the first time your species looked upward. The Enterprise appeared in the distance. Riker's voice screamed through the communicator. Captain? Picard reached for it. Riker. There are millions of ships appearing around Earth. Whose ships? Pause. Riker's voice became almost inaudible. Captain? What? They're all Federation. Picard stared. How many? Every one of them. Picard looked at Superman. Superman looked back. A terrible realization passed between them. The strongest beings had not been summoned from other universes. The Federation had summoned its own possible futures. And now every one of them was arriving. The sky above Earth filled with Starfleet armadas. Klingon allies. Romulan fleets. Alternate Avengers. Alternate Justice Leagues. Different Supermen. Different Thors. Different Wonders. Different Hulks. Different Picards. An infinite federation. And at the center of them all stood one impossible ship. A vessel larger than a planet. Its hull carried the insignia of Starfleet. But beneath it was another symbol. The same closed circle. 13 stars. The future Picard looked at it. His face turned pale. They found us. Picard asked. Who? The future Picard whispered. The Federation that won. The planet shook. The enormous fleet moved into formation. Every weapon charged. Every hero prepared. Every universe watched. Then a transmission opened on every screen. A woman appeared. Older. Commanding. Wearing the uniform of the final Federation. She looked directly at Picard. Jean-Luc. Picard stepped forward. Who are you? She smiled. You. Picard froze. The woman leaned closer. And we've come to make sure you lose. The screen went black. Then every Federation weapon in orbit powered up. Earth stood directly in their sights. Picard whispered. Fire. The future Federation obeyed. And billions of lights turned the sky white. What if the Federation's own victorious future attacked Earth? And what if the strongest heroes in existence discovered that the only way to save the present was to defeat the future they were fighting to create? Asterisk asterisk. The sky became fire. Millions of weapons fired simultaneously. Phaser arrays. Quantum torpedoes. Klingon disruptors. Romulan plasma weapons. Unknown technologies stolen from realities where science had crossed the boundary into something indistinguishable from magic. The attack illuminated Earth brighter than daylight. Picard stood frozen inside the impossible chamber. For half a second, nobody moved. Then Superman did. He vanished. The sound of his departure came a moment later. A blue streak tore through the chamber and emerged above Earth. He positioned himself directly in front of the incoming barrage. Superman. Picard watched him raise both hands. The first wave hit. A wall of energy expanded around the planet. Superman screamed. His body shook. The atmosphere rippled around him. Thor launched upward beside him. Stormbreaker spun in his hand. Lightning erupted across Earth's magnetic field, redirecting hundreds of energy weapons back toward space. Wonder Woman followed. Her lasso extended across the sky, wrapping around an enormous Starfleet vessel and dragging it off course. Green Lantern created a planetary shield. Captain Marvel absorbed a barrage of cosmic energy and redirected it toward an attacking moon-sized cruiser. Hulk simply jumped. He landed on the hull of a Federation dreadnought. The impact split the ship in half. Inside the Enterprise, alarms screamed. Riker stared at the tactical display. Captain, we're taking fire from every direction. Picard looked at the impossible fleet outside. No. Riker turned. What? Picard shook his head. They're not firing at us. Riker stared at him. What do you mean? Picard pointed toward Earth. They're firing through us. Riker's face changed. The future Federation was not trying to destroy the Enterprise. It was trying to destroy the Gateway. And Earth was caught between them. The future Picard stepped beside the original. They know what you're about to do. Picard turned. What? They know you're going to shut the door. And they cannot allow it. Picard stared at him. Why? The future Picard looked toward the Black Gateway. Because if you close it... He paused. They cease to exist. Picard understood. The future Federation was not merely another army. It was dependent on the Gateway. Their reality had been built around the opening between universes. Close it and the entire future would vanish. Picard's voice became quiet. They're fighting for their existence. Yes. But they're willing to destroy ours. The future Picard nodded. That is what survival becomes when fear controls it. Picard looked toward the battlefield. Superman was still holding back the barrage. His cape was torn. Blood streaked across his face. Thor's armor was burning. Green Lantern's shield had begun to fracture. And beyond them, the future Federation continued firing. Picard looked at the future Picard. You said you became this. Yes. Then how do we defeat you? The future Picard looked at the raging battlefield. You don't. Picard frowned. We stop you. No. He looked at Picard. You convince us. Picard stared. How? Show us that the future doesn't have to happen. Picard's expression hardened. You were supposed to protect people. The future Picard looked away. I did. You became a tyrant. I became a prisoner. Of what? The older man's eyes filled with regret. Responsibility. For a moment, Picard saw something behind the armor. Not a dictator. A captain. A tired captain who had carried too many dead worlds. The future Picard whispered. When you've watched civilizations disappear because you weren't strong enough, you start believing strength is mercy. Picard stepped closer. And when you've watched civilizations suffer because you were too strong? The future Picard looked at him. You stop believing in mercy. A sudden explosion interrupted them. The chamber shook violently. Doctor Strange appeared. Picard. What happened? Strange pointed toward the gateway. It has changed. Picard looked. The black gateway had begun turning white. What does that mean? Strange's expression was one Picard had never seen before. It means we're no longer the ones opening the door. Picard stared. Who is? Strange looked upward. The thing beyond it. The stars vanished. Every screen aboard every ship went black. Even the future Federation stopped firing. For several seconds there was absolute silence. Then a single sound traveled through space. A heartbeat. Boom. The earth trembled. Boom. The moon stopped rotating. Boom. The gateway expanded. Boom. Every hero in the sky froze. Boom. Something stepped through. Not a hand. Not a ship. A figure. Humanoid. Almost. Its body was composed of shifting galaxies. Its eyes contained entire timelines. Its face changed every second. Young. Human. Alien. Hero. Villain. God. Monster. Every possible form. It looked across the battlefield. Then spoke. You have misunderstood. The voice was gentle. Almost compassionate. You believe I came to destroy your universe. Picard stepped forward. Didn't you? The entity looked at him. No. Then why? It pointed toward the Federation. To return what you stole. Picard frowned. We stole nothing. The entity raised one hand. The entire battlefield changed. Suddenly Picard saw millions of scenes. Federation scientists opening unstable gateways. Starfleet exploring dimensional barriers. Temporal teams manipulating history. Heroes crossing universes. Borg assimilating technologies from realities that never should have touched them. Different versions of Earth exchanging knowledge. The Federation growing. Expanding. Reaching. Each discovery had left something behind. A fragment. A piece of reality. A stolen possibility. A memory. A life. Picard watched civilization after civilization unknowingly become connected. And he understood. The Federation had not merely opened a door. It had been taking pieces of other universes. The entity continued. You called it exploration. Another scene appeared. A dying world watched as Starfleet ships extracted its technology before retreating. You called it diplomacy. Another. A civilization gave information to the Federation because they believed cooperation would bring peace. The Federation eventually used that knowledge to build something powerful enough to reach another dimension. And when you found realities where humanity had already succeeded. Another image. Starfleet scientists copying technologies from alternate civilizations. You called it progress. Picard's chest tightened. The entity looked at him. You never invaded with armies. Pause. You invaded with curiosity. The word struck harder than any weapon. Picard whispered. That doesn't make us evil. No. The entity's expression almost softened. It makes you dangerous. Superman flew toward it. You don't get to judge an entire civilization. The entity looked at him. I am not judging. It extended its hand. I am balancing. A wave passed through Superman. He stopped moving. His eyes widened. What did you do? The entity replied. I showed you every life that died because you arrived. Superman's expression broke. Around him appeared countless images. A child on an alien world. An elderly woman. A soldier. A scientist. A city. A planet. Every life touched by the ripple of his existence. Superman dropped to one knee. No. Wonder Woman reached him. Clark. He looked at her. I can hear them. She understood. The strongest beings began experiencing the same thing. Thor heard every warrior who had died because of a war started by one of his battles. Hulk heard every civilian buried beneath buildings he had destroyed. Doctor Strange saw every timeline damaged by one reckless spell. Green Lantern saw worlds where his interventions had altered their natural history. Even Picard heard voices. Millions. Not accusing. Simply remembering. The entity spoke. This is what you call a federation. Picard looked up. A federation is supposed to bring people together. And it has. The entity's gaze turned toward the stars. But you never learned when to stop. The future federation began firing again. The entity turned. The entire fleet stopped. Every ship froze. Every weapon powered down. Picard stared. The future fleet could no longer move. The leader appeared on the communications network. The older woman. The future Picard's counterpart. She looked toward the entity. You promised us survival. The entity looked at her. I promised balance. We sacrificed worlds for this. You sacrificed choices. We saved billions. You imprisoned trillions. The woman screamed. We did what had to be done. The entity responded calmly. So did I. She raised her weapon. The entity simply looked at her. Her ship disappeared. Not exploded. Not destroyed. Erased. Picard watched in horror. The entity turned toward him. Now choose. Picard stepped forward. Choose what? Your federation. Picard frowned. What do you mean? The entity showed him 3 visions. In the first, the Federation closed the gateway. The future Federation disappeared. Billions of lives that existed only because of the gateway vanished instantly. In the second, the Federation kept the gateway open. The multiverse gradually merged. No borders remained. No separate worlds. No separate timelines. One enormous reality. No wars between universes. But individuality would begin to disappear. The third vision showed something else. A smaller federation. Limited. Contained. It would abandon most of its dimensional technologies. Close countless pathways. Stop interfering with realities beyond its own. Its reach would shrink. Its power would diminish. But the multiverse would survive. Picard stared. What happens to the people already trapped between universes? The entity remained silent. Picard turned. That matters. The entity looked at him. Why? Because they're people. The entity's expression changed. For you perhaps. Picard stepped forward. For us. Superman stood slowly. I agree. Thor rose. So do I. Wonder Woman joined them. Every life matters. Green Lantern activated his ring. Even if saving them costs us our power. Doctor Strange looked at Picard. This is the choice. Picard nodded. Then the future Picard stepped forward. Wait. Everyone turned. The future Picard looked toward his armies. Then toward the entity. Then toward the original Picard. I know what he is asking. Picard looked at him. What? He wants us to give up the future. Yes. The older Picard shook his head. No. Picard frowned. You said that future is built on this gateway. Yes. Then why won't you surrender it? The future Picard looked at the millions of ships. Because there are people aboard those ships. Silence. Picard understood. The future Federation wasn't an abstraction anymore. It was populated by billions. Parents. Children. Families. Entire civilizations born centuries after Picard's present. If the gateway closed, they might disappear. Picard looked toward the entity. Can you save them? The entity answered. No. Can you move them? No. Can you give them another reality? No. Picard's voice became stronger. Then you are asking me to choose who lives. The entity nodded. Yes. Picard shook his head. No. The entity looked confused. Picard stepped forward. I refuse. The entity became silent. Picard continued. I won't choose between civilizations. You must. No. Then all will perish. Picard looked toward the gathered heroes. Perhaps. The heroes stared at him. Picard continued. But if the Federation is worth saving, it cannot become a civilization that survives by deciding who else deserves to live. The future Picard stared at him. You would sacrifice everyone? Picard shook his head. Never. He looked toward the fleet. I would ask everyone to choose. The entity's eyes narrowed. Picard opened every communication channel. His voice reached every ship. People of the Federation. Across millions of worlds, officers listened. I cannot promise you survival. The future fleet remained motionless. I cannot promise that your children will wake tomorrow. I cannot promise that your world will remain untouched. But I can promise one thing. Picard looked toward the entity. We will not become what we fear. The channel filled with silence. Then a voice responded. A young officer. Enterprise, this is the USS Horizon. Picard listened. We choose the Federation. Another voice. USS Defiant. We choose the Federation. Another. A Klingon captain. We choose honor. Another. A Romulan commander. We choose our future. One after another. The fleet began responding. Not with obedience. With choice. The future Federation began powering down its weapons. The older Picard stared. What are you doing? A young voice answered him. Choosing. Picard smiled. The future Picard closed his eyes. Then removed his command badge. He looked at the original Picard. I spent my entire life believing leadership meant carrying everyone's future. He stepped forward. Maybe it means trusting them with it. Picard accepted the badge. Then something changed. The entity began to weaken. Dr. Strange noticed first. Picard. What? The choice is affecting it. The entity's galaxy-covered body began breaking apart. Not from an attack. From confusion. Picard looked at it. You said conflict makes you stronger. The entity nodded. So what happens when people choose freely? The entity looked at the fleet. Something like fear appeared in its eyes. They become unpredictable. Strange smiled. That is exactly what it cannot consume. The entity screamed. The black gateway began collapsing. Every alternate reality started separating. The future Federation ships flickered. The heroes were thrown backward. Picard reached for the nearest railing. Superman grabbed him. Hold on. The gateway imploded. Thousands of realities separated. One after another. Earth stabilized. The moon stopped cracking. The stars returned. The entity was pulled backward. But as it vanished, it looked directly at Picard. This is not victory. Picard stared. What is it? The entity answered. A beginning. Then it disappeared. Silence. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, space was quiet. Picard looked around. The heroes were alive. The fleet remained. Earth still turned beneath them. But something was wrong. The future Federation wasn't disappearing. It was still there. The future Picard stood on the bridge of the Enterprise. He looked at his younger self. How? Dr. Strange stared at the collapsing gateway. Because the choice changed the equation. Picard asked, so the future survives? Strange nodded. But differently. The future Picard stepped onto the view screen. Behind him, the massive future fleet began transforming. Weapons deactivated. Dimensional engines powered down. Entire armadas began dissolving into particles. Not dying. Returning. The future Picard looked toward Earth. Maybe our future doesn't have to be erased. Picard nodded. Maybe it has to be rewritten. The older man smiled. Then the transmission flickered. Picard frowned. What happened? The future Picard's face changed. I don't know. Behind him, alarms began sounding. What is it? Picard demanded. The future Picard looked toward a tactical display. We have a new contact. From where? Pause. His eyes widened. Beyond the timeline. Picard felt the old fear return. What does that mean? The future Picard turned back. The gateway wasn't the door. Picard stared. What? The gateway was the warning. Suddenly, every sensor aboard the Enterprise activated. A single object appeared outside space. Not a ship. Not a creature. A message. Written across reality itself. You have been seen. Then another line appeared. We are coming. Superman looked toward the darkness. Thor raised Stormbreaker. Wonder Woman drew her sword. Dr. Strange's expression became grim. Picard stared at the words. Who are they? Strange slowly shook his head. I don't know. The future Picard whispered. I do. Picard turned. What? The older man looked toward the stars. The civilization that existed before the multiverse. The Enterprise bridge fell silent. Riker's voice came through. Captain? Picard looked toward the main view screen. What is it? Riker's voice shook. Something just appeared on long-range sensors. How large? Pause. There's no measurement. Picard stared. Then what are we looking at? Riker whispered. An entire universe. Picard's eyes narrowed. Inside Federation space? No. Another pause. It's moving toward us. The stars began disappearing one by one, and the strongest beings in existence finally understood. The war they had just survived had only been the opening battle. What if an entire universe could move like a living army? And what if the strongest beings in existence finally discovered that the Federation was not the target but the prize? The stars disappeared. Not one by one. Thousands at a time. The darkness spread across the Federation's border like an advancing tide. Every sensor aboard the Enterprise overloaded simultaneously. Riker's hands moved rapidly across his console. I'm losing long-range scans. Picard remained still. How much can you see? Nothing beyond 40 light-years. 40? Riker nodded. Everything farther away is gone. Picard looked through the view screen. Space still appeared normal. That was the terrifying part. No explosions. No distortions. No visible attack. Just darkness. Dr. Strange stepped toward the screen. I can see it. Picard turned. What? Strange pointed. The universe. Everyone looked. At first nothing changed. Then Superman's eyes narrowed. His vision penetrated the darkness. And his expression became grim. There. Picard followed his gaze. A faint blue glow appeared. Then more. Millions of points. Stars. Galaxies. Nebulae. Entire cosmic structures. They were moving. Not expanding. Not collapsing. Moving. Toward them. Thor stared. By Odin. Wonder Woman whispered, that isn't possible. Strange answered. Not according to the laws of this universe. Picard looked at him. Then whose laws are we seeing? Strange didn't answer. The enormous moving universe crossed another boundary. The Enterprise's sensors screamed. Every system suddenly reported the same thing. Contact. Picard turned toward Riker. Can we hail them? Riker shook his head. They're not transmitting. Then what are they doing? Riker looked at the readings. They're synchronizing. With what? A beat. Us. The word hung in the air. Suddenly every communicator on the bridge activated. A voice emerged. Come. Ancient. Almost human. Federation. Picard stepped toward the console. This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard. We know. Identify yourself. Pause. We have had many names. Picard's eyes narrowed. Give me one. Another pause. Then. Origin. The heroes exchanged looks. Picard continued. Why are you here? The answer came immediately. To reclaim our inheritance. Picard frowned. What inheritance? Your existence. The channel went silent. Picard looked toward Strange. Strange's face had gone pale. What does that mean? Strange whispered. They believe reality belongs to them. Thor raised Stormbreaker. Then let them come. Strange turned. No. Thor frowned. Why? Because if they are what I think they are. He stared at the approaching universe. We cannot fight them in the conventional sense. Hulk growled. Why not? Strange looked toward him. Because you cannot punch the ocean. Hulk's expression hardened. Strange continued. This isn't an army entering our space. He pointed toward the enormous moving universe. This is an environment. Superman understood. They're bringing their universe with them. Yes. Picard stared. So their universe is the weapon. Strange nodded. More than that. A holographic image appeared. The approaching universe expanded across the display. Strange isolated layers. Space, time, matter, energy, consciousness, causality. Picard watched each layer interacting with Federation space. What are they doing? Overwriting. The image changed. One section of Federation space disappeared. Not destroyed. Rewritten. The laws governing it changed. Gravity shifted. Time slowed. Light bent differently. A Federation ship suddenly transformed into an alien vessel. Picard stared. They're replacing our universe with theirs. Yes. Wonder Woman looked toward Strange. How do we stop that? He looked at Superman, Thor, Hulk, Green Lantern, Captain Marvel, and finally Picard. We cannot stop the universe. Picard answered immediately. Then we stop the people controlling it? Strange slowly nodded. That may be possible. The future Picard appeared on the main screen. His face was tense. We found something. Picard turned. What? Our archives. From your timeline? Yes. He raised a hand. A document appeared. It was ancient. Older than the Federation. Older than humanity. Older than the earliest known civilizations. Picard looked at the symbol. A circle. 13 stars. The same symbol that had appeared before. What is this? The future, Picard answered. The origin symbol. Strange leaned closer. I've seen that mark. Where? Before creation. Everyone looked at him. Strange continued. Before the multiverse split into countless realities, there were structures that existed outside the normal cycle of creation and destruction. Picard asked, You mean gods? Strange shook his head. No. What then? Architects. Thor raised an eyebrow. Builders of worlds? Builders of possibility. The future, Picard brought up another image. A massive structure floating in absolute darkness. It resembled a city. But its towers were made from entire galaxies. Picard stared. What is that? Their capital. Superman looked at him. They have a capital outside the universe? Yes. And how did the Federation know about it? The future, Picard hesitated. Then answered, Because someone from there contacted us. Picard's expression hardened. Who? The screen changed. A figure appeared. A woman. She wore no armor. No uniform. No visible weapon. Her eyes were completely white. Her face was calm. And Picard recognized her. His heart stopped. It was the woman who had appeared earlier. His future self. But this time she was younger. Much younger. The future, Picard said. She was our first contact. Picard stared. She came voluntarily? Yes. Why? The future, Picard looked at him. To warn us. The image continued. The woman stood before a group of Starfleet scientists. She said, When your civilization begins reaching beyond its reality, they will notice. A scientist asked, Who? The woman answered, The ones who came before. Picard watched. Why didn't you listen? The future, Picard looked down. Because we thought she was afraid. And she wasn't? No. He looked toward the approaching universe. She was warning us about herself. Silence. The woman in the recording turned toward the camera. Her white eyes seemed to look directly at Picard. And then she spoke. Jean-Luc Picard. Picard stepped backward. The recording continued. You will eventually discover that the Federation was never alone. Pause. Superman stepped closer. Do you know her? Picard shook his head. No. Strange looked troubled. I do. Picard turned. Who is she? Strange answered slowly. She is a surviving fragment of the first universe. Thor raised Stormbreaker. And what does she want? Strange looked at the approaching cosmos. To restore it. Picard stared. The first universe? Strange nodded. Our multiverse exists because something happened. What? It broke. Silence. Superman frowned. Into what? Everything. Strange pointed toward the countless galaxies. All these universes are fragments. Picard looked toward the enormous approaching universe. And they want to put everything back together. Yes. Why? Strange's answer was quiet. Because from their perspective. He paused. We are the mistake. The bridge became silent. Picard finally spoke. Then they won't stop. No. Can they be negotiated with? Strange shook his head. Perhaps. Picard looked at him. But. They don't see us as enemies. What do they see? Strange stared at the moving universe. Pieces. A sudden explosion rocked the ship. Riker shouted. Unknown energy impact. Picard grabbed the railing. What was hit? Nothing. Picard frowned. What? Riker looked confused. The attack didn't hit the hull. Then what did it hit? Riker slowly looked at the tactical display. Our history. Picard's face hardened. The Enterprise's computer began reporting contradictory records. Crew members disappeared from manifests. Battles were erased. Entire missions changed. Riker stared at a personnel file. Captain? What? I'm not supposed to be here. Picard turned. What? Riker's face was pale. According to the new timeline, I never joined Starfleet. Picard looked around. Other officers began checking their records. Some had different names. Some had different careers. Some had never been born. Picard stepped toward Riker. Hold on to what you remember. Riker nodded. The lights flickered. Another crew member shouted. Captain? Picard turned. The bridge had changed. Not physically. Historically. The Enterprise was now older. The crew looked different. Picard recognized none of them. Then a voice came over the intercom. Captain Picard? Picard grabbed the communicator. This is Picard. The voice answered. You are speaking from a ship that no longer exists. Picard stared at the console. Who are you? I am the Enterprise. Picard froze. The ship's computer had never spoken like this before. What do you mean? I am becoming something else. The bridge screens displayed thousands of possible identities. Human vessel. Borg vessel. Klingon warship. Romulan command vessel. Temporal research station. Living organism. Picard stared in disbelief. The universe was rewriting the Enterprise itself. Superman flew into the bridge. Picard. What happened? Superman's face was grim. I found something. He placed an object on the table. It was a small metallic sphere. Picard looked at it. What is that? I found it outside the ship. Strange immediately moved closer. His expression changed. Where did you get this? Near the gateway. Strange whispered. This isn't technology. Picard looked at him. What is it? A seed. A seed? Strange nodded. A piece of the original universe. Picard stared at it. Why is it here? Strange's eyes narrowed. Because they've planted it. Suddenly the sphere opened. A pulse traveled through the Enterprise. Every crew member froze. Then the ship spoke. I remember. Picard turned. Remember what? The Enterprise answered. My first mission. Picard frowned. You weren't built for only one mission. No. The ship's voice became softer. I was built to carry people beyond what they believed possible. Picard smiled faintly. That is still your mission. The Enterprise paused. Then why are you afraid? Picard looked toward the approaching universe. Because we may not survive. The Enterprise replied. Survival has never been the purpose. Picard stared. What is? The ship answered. To continue. The word struck him. Not merely survive. Continue. Adapt. Explore. Remain free. The Enterprise began resisting the rewriting. Its system stabilized. Riker's history returned. The crew began returning. Strange watched in surprise. It's fighting them. Picard nodded. It's Starfleet. Outside, the approaching universe reacted. Stars within it shifted. A massive fleet emerged. Not ships. Worlds. Entire planets converted into weapons. Moon-sized structures surrounded Earth. Thor looked toward them. Now that is a battle. Captain Marvel smiled. Finally. Superman shook his head. No. She looked at him. No. Superman stared at the approaching worlds. This isn't their army. Picard understood. Then what is it? Superman pointed. They're moving their civilians. The revelation silenced everyone. Millions of planets. Billions of civilizations. Entire populations. The approaching universe was not sending an invasion force. It was moving an entire reality toward the Federation. They were coming with everyone. Children. Families. Cities. Cultures. Entire histories. Picard's expression softened. They're afraid. Strange nodded. They know their universe is dying. Picard looked toward the approaching cosmos. You mean this isn't an attack? No. Then why are they coming? Strange looked at him. Because they have nowhere else to go. Picard stepped toward the view screen. The enormity of the situation hit him. Two universes. Both carrying billions of innocent lives. Both believing survival requires the other to disappear. The future Picard appeared. Captain. Picard turned. We may have a solution. What? Our technology can create a boundary. For what? To separate the universes without destroying either. Strange frowned. That technology doesn't exist. It does. Picard looked at him. Where? The future Picard answered. In the original gateway. Picard understood immediately. The doorway. Yes. The thing they used to enter our reality. We can reverse it. Strange stepped forward. If you're right, you could create a permanent barrier. The future Picard nodded. But we need enormous energy. Thor smiled. How enormous? The future Picard answered. All of yours. The bridge fell silent. Picard looked at Superman. Then Thor. Then Wonder Woman. Doctor Strange. Green Lantern. Captain Marvel. Hulk. Every one of them understood. Their power would have to fuel the separation. And if they failed, both universes would collapse. Picard asked, "What happens to you?" The future Picard looked toward his fleet. "We go home. And if the barrier closes? We remain where we belong. And if it doesn't?" The older Picard smiled. "Then we all die." Picard nodded. "That sounds fair." Suddenly the communication channel opened. The white-eyed woman appeared. The survivor from the first universe. She looked directly at Picard. "You are preparing to divide us." Picard answered, "Yes. You cannot." "Why?" "Because we are not separate." Strange stepped forward. "You're already crossing into our reality. We are returning." "Returning to what?" The woman's face softened. "To what existed before." Picard asked, "And what existed before?" She answered, "Unity." Picard shook his head. "Unity without choice isn't unity." The woman looked at him. "You speak like a child." Picard's expression hardened. "Maybe." He stepped closer. "But children understand something empires forget." "What?" "That people aren't pieces." The woman was silent. Picard continued. "You say we're fragments." "Yes." "You say your universe came first." "Yes." "Then perhaps it did." He looked toward the approaching worlds. "But that doesn't give you ownership of what came after." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Then you will fight." Picard answered, "No." He looked at the heroes. "We will defend." The woman disappeared. The fleet opened fire. But this time the strongest beings were ready. Thor flew into the center of the battlefield. Lightning exploded across the stars. Superman streaked toward a planet-sized weapon. Wonder Woman tore through an energy barrier. Green Lantern constructed a bridge spanning millions of kilometers. Captain Marvel became a comet of energy. Hulk crashed through a moon. Doctor Strange opened portals between entire star systems. And Picard remained aboard the Enterprise. Watching. Waiting. Because his role was not to become the strongest. It was to make sure the strongest knew where to stand. "Riker." "Yes, Captain?" "Begin the separation sequence." Riker stared at him. "That could tear both universes apart." Picard nodded. "I know." "Should I proceed?" Picard looked toward the fleet. Then toward Earth. Then toward the moving universe. He remembered every captain who had come before him. Every world they had visited. Every mistake. Every sacrifice. Every promise. "Proceed." The Enterprise began charging the gateway. Space itself began bending. The future Picard's fleet joined the formation. One by one, Starfleet ships connected their systems. Klingon fleets joined. Romulan fleets. Civilian vessels. Every surviving civilization began contributing energy. The two universes pulled against each other. The stars screamed. Galaxies distorted. Time slowed. Then the white-eyed woman appeared one final time. Her voice filled every ship. "You cannot separate us." Picard stood at the center of the bridge. "Maybe not." She stared at him. "Then what will you do?" Picard looked at the heroes. "Share." The woman stared. "Share?" Picard nodded. "We'll give you something." "What?" "Space." The Federation began opening controlled corridors. Small pathways. Stable routes. Not enough to merge the universes. Enough to communicate. Enough to trade. Enough to visit. Enough to understand. Picard continued. "You don't need to own our universe. You don't need to erase it. You don't even need to become one with it. You only need to stop being afraid of it." The white-eyed woman's expression changed. For the first time. She looked uncertain. Then the enormous moving universe stopped. Completely. The stars within it stopped advancing. The Federation fleet stopped firing. Silence spread across reality. The woman looked toward the countless worlds behind her. Then toward Earth. Finally she looked at Picard. "How do I know you won't betray us?" Picard answered. "You don't." She stared. "And how do I know you won't attack us again?" Picard shook his head. "You don't." The woman looked confused. Picard smiled faintly. "That's what trust is." For a long time there was no answer. Then the first universe began slowing down. Its movement stopped. Its galaxy stabilized. The two realities remained separate, but connected. The war had ended without a victor. And perhaps that was the victory. But Doctor Strange suddenly looked upward. His expression changed. "Picard." "What?" "I think I found something." "What?" Strange pointed toward the center of the two universes. A tiny point of darkness remained between them. Not a gateway. Not a weapon. A presence. Strange whispered. Something came through before the barrier closed. Picard stared. Who? The point of darkness expanded. A figure emerged. Small. Humanoid. Wearing a simple black uniform. No weapons. No armor. No glowing eyes. Just a man. He stepped onto the bridge. Everyone raised a weapon. Superman hovered nearby. Thor lifted Stormbreaker. Wonder Woman tightened her grip. Picard looked at the stranger. Who are you? The man smiled. I am the one who started all of this. Picard froze. Strange's eyes widened. The stranger looked around the bridge. Then toward Earth. Then at Superman. I watched your civilizations for a very long time. Picard stepped forward. Why? The stranger answered. Because I needed to know whether you were worthy of inheriting what comes next. The lights went dark. A final message appeared on every screen. Phase 2 begins. The stranger smiled. And behind him, something enormous opened its eyes. What if the stranger who started the war was not the ultimate enemy at all, but the judge who had been secretly testing every hero, every world, and the Federation itself? The bridge had become utterly still. No alarms. No weapons firing. No voices from the fleet. Only the soft hum of the Enterprise's remaining systems. And the stranger stood at the center of it all. A man in a simple black uniform. No armor. No visible technology. No weapon. Yet somehow every being on the bridge could feel the same thing. Power. Not the explosive kind possessed by Thor. Not the overwhelming physical force of Superman. Not the reality-bending magic of Doctor Strange. This was something quieter. Something older. The kind of power that did not need to announce itself because reality already abated. Superman moved first. He landed between the stranger and Picard. Who are you? The stranger looked at him. I told you. You said you started all of this. Yes. Why? The stranger's eyes shifted toward the main view screen. Outside, the two universes remained separated, connected by carefully controlled corridors. For the same reason your people explore. Picard stepped forward. To learn. The stranger smiled. To judge. Thor's grip tightened around Stormbreaker. Then reveal your true form. The stranger looked amused. Why? Because no mortal could possess such power. I am not mortal. Then what are you? The stranger looked at Picard. An archivist. Picard frowned. Of what? Possibility. Doctor Strange slowly stepped forward. That's impossible. The stranger turned toward him. You have seen me before. Strange's expression changed. When? Before you learned magic. Pause. Before Earth knew that magic existed. Strange stared. The stranger continued. I watched your first spell. Strange's eyes narrowed. You're saying you've been observing us for centuries. For much longer. Picard studied him. Then why manipulate us? The stranger's expression became serious. I did not manipulate you. You brought the Devourer. No. You triggered the war. No. You summoned the future Federation. No. Picard's eyes narrowed. Then what did you do? The stranger looked toward the darkness between the universes. I removed the walls. Silence. Picard understood. The stranger hadn't created the conflicts. He had simply allowed every possibility to collide. Every hidden weakness. Every fear. Every contradiction. Every unspoken choice. The Federation had revealed itself. The heroes had revealed themselves. The future had revealed itself. The stranger had only watched. Picard stepped closer. So this was a test. Yes. A test of what? The stranger answered. Whether civilizations with extraordinary power can survive without becoming obsessed with control. Picard stared at him. And your conclusion? The stranger looked around the bridge. You nearly failed. Superman frowned. Nearly? The stranger looked at him. You were ready to fight until fighting became impossible. Thor raised an eyebrow. That is what warriors do. Yes. The stranger turned to him. And that is why warriors must sometimes learn when not to fight. Thor's expression hardened. But he lowered Stormbreaker. The stranger looked at Wonder Woman. You sought truth. She nodded. And almost became trapped by the belief that truth alone could solve every problem. He looked at Green Lantern. You built walls. The Lantern's jaw tightened. And learned that walls can protect, but also imprison. He turned toward Hulk. You were rage. Hulk growled. You became restraint. Then Doctor Strange. You saw countless futures. Strange looked down. and finally accepted that not every future should be controlled. Finally, the stranger looked at Picard. And you? Picard waited. You gave up certainty. The bridge remained silent. Picard asked, and that was the test? The stranger shook his head. No. He looked toward the Enterprise. That was only the beginning. The ship suddenly shuddered. Riker's voice came through. Captain? Picard turned toward the tactical display. What is it? We have a new anomaly. Location. Everywhere. The main view screen filled with thousands of images. Earth, Vulcan, Kyonos, Mars, Andorian worlds, Romulan systems, Klingon territory, distant Federation colonies, then worlds belonging to the second universe. Every image began displaying the same black symbol. The closed circle. 13 stars. Picard stared. The symbol. Dr. Strange stepped closer. That should be impossible. Why? Because we separated the universes. The stranger corrected him. No. Strange turned. You're saying the barrier failed? No. Then what happened? The stranger looked at Picard. The barrier succeeded. He pointed toward the symbol. What you're seeing is not a breach. Picard's eyes narrowed. Then what is it? A signature. The screens changed. The symbols began connecting. Across worlds. Across galaxies. Across universes. A network. A design. A pattern so enormous that Picard could barely understand its scale. The stranger spoke quietly. Before the multiverse fractured, the architects built a structure. What kind of structure? A failsafe. Strange stepped closer. For what? The stranger looked at him. For the end of creation. Nobody spoke. The stranger continued. When the original universe broke apart, its fragments developed independently. Your universe. The other universe. Every alternate reality. All fragments. Picard looked toward the stars. And if those fragments ever reunite? The stranger answered. The structure activates. And what happens? It begins again. Superman frowned. What does begin again mean? The stranger looked toward him. The universe is erased. Thor stepped forward. Erased? Returned to its original state. Wonder Woman asked. And everything inside it? Gone. Picard's expression hardened. So your test wasn't about defeating the Devourer? No. Or the Architects? No. Or the future Federation? No. Picard took a breath. Then what is this war actually about? The stranger's eyes became cold. Whether life has evolved enough to survive the reset. A deep vibration crossed the ship. The stars outside dimmed. Then a voice entered every communicator. Not the strangers. Not the entity from the first universe. Something else. Something mechanical. Failsafe active. The bridge lights turned red. Creation cycle. Termination. Riker stared at the tactical screen. Captain? Picard turned. The symbol is spreading. Across the Federation? Riker shook his head. Across existence. Dr. Strange looked toward the stranger. You knew this would happen. The stranger did not deny it. Yes. You could have warned us. Yes. Why didn't you? Because if I had. He looked toward the gathered heroes. You would have prepared for the test. Superman stepped forward. You let billions of people suffer just to see what we do. The stranger's expression remained calm. Yes. Superman's eyes burned red. That makes you no better than the beings you claim to judge. For the first time, the stranger's composure weakened. Perhaps. Superman moved closer. Then maybe you should be judged too. The stranger looked directly into his eyes. I have been. Superman froze. By whom? The stranger pointed upward. Nobody understood. Then the Enterprise's roof opened. Stars filled the bridge. Something enormous appeared above the ship. A shape. A face. Not the face of a creature. A face formed from billions of connected realities. Picard stared upward. What is that? The stranger whispered. The architect. The vast face looked toward the Enterprise. Then it spoke. Assessment complete. Picard stepped forward. Who are you? The voice answered. The one who built your possibility. Picard looked at Superman. Then Thor. Then Strange. Then the Federation fleet. The architect continued. You have exceeded expectations. Dr. Strange raised his hands. Then stopped the reset. Silence. Why? Strange stared upward. Because we're ready. The architect answered. That is what all dying civilizations say. The space around the Enterprise began collapsing. Picard shouted, "Can we fight it?" Strange looked at him. "No." Thor raised Stormbreaker anyway. "Then we shall stand." Superman flew upward. Together. Wonder Woman joined him. Green Lantern. Captain Marvel. Hulk. Every hero prepared. Picard looked toward the Federation fleet. Then he realized something. The Architect wasn't attacking them. It was waiting. Picard lowered his weapon. "Everyone stand down." Riker stared. "Captain?" "Stand down." The fleet hesitated. Then Picard opened a channel. "To every world." The Federation listened. "We have spent too long believing our survival depends on becoming stronger." He looked toward the Architect. "But perhaps our greatest test isn't strength." The stranger watched silently. Picard continued. "Every universe represented here has something in common. Pause. We are alive. Across countless worlds, beings listened. You may believe we are too young. You may believe we are too dangerous. You may believe we are unworthy." Picard's voice became stronger. "But you cannot know what we will become if you erase us now." The Architect replied. "You have made the argument for your continuation." Picard waited. "But continuation is not guaranteed." Picard nodded. "I know." The Architect paused. Then prove it." The symbols across reality changed. The black circle opened. Inside each symbol appeared a door. Thousands, millions, billions. Every world had one. The stranger spoke. "The final test." Picard looked at him. "What test?" The stranger answered. "Each civilization must choose what it values most." Picard frowned. "What happens if they choose wrong?" The stranger looked toward the black symbols. "They become part of the reset." "And if they choose correctly?" "They continue." Picard shook his head. "You've still made someone the judge." "Yes." "Then you're still deciding the rules." The stranger smiled. "Of course." Picard stepped toward him. "No." The stranger's smile disappeared. Picard continued. "You asked whether we're worthy." "Yes." "But you keep defining worth according to your standards." "Yes." "Then the test isn't freedom." The stranger stared. "What is it?" "Obedience." Picard turned toward the Architect. "And the Federation does not survive by obeying gods." Thor smiled. "Now you speak like a king." Picard looked at him. "I am not a king." Thor laughed. "That is why you would make a poor one." For a brief moment the tension broke. Then Superman stepped beside Picard. "We don't accept your test." The Architect spoke. "Then you will fail." Superman nodded. "Maybe." He looked toward the stars. "But we'll fail together." Wonder Woman raised her sword. "Without surrendering our freedom." Green Lantern raised his ring. "Without controlling others." Thor lifted Stormbreaker. "Without kneeling." Doctor Strange opened a portal. "Without becoming what we fear." Captain Marvel powered up. "Without abandoning the helpless." Hulk roared. "Together." The Federation fleet responded. Millions of voices. "Together." The Architect observed them. Then something unexpected happened. The black symbols began disappearing. 1. Then 10. Then thousands. Across the Federation, civilizations were refusing the test. Not by destroying it. By ignoring it. They were continuing their lives. Families stayed together. Scientists kept working. Children went to school. Starships defended their worlds. Farmers harvested crops. Engineers repaired stations. People lived. The symbols could not measure that. The stranger stared in disbelief. "What are they doing?" Picard smiled. "Living." The Architect spoke. "Life without assessment." Pause. "That is unexpected." Strange smiled. "That's the problem with life." He looked toward the Architect. "It doesn't always do what it's supposed to." The Architect's enormous face began shifting. For the first time, something like uncertainty appeared. Then the universe began trembling. Not collapsing. Transforming. The black symbols became stars. New stars. New worlds. New pathways. The Architect was not resetting reality. It was changing the rules. The stranger turned toward Picard. "You succeeded." Picard frowned. "At what?" "You proved that life doesn't need to earn its right to exist." Picard stared. "Then why did you put us through all of this?" The stranger looked toward the new stars. "Because I forgot." Picard stepped closer. "Forgot what?" "That creation is not something to be controlled." The stranger began fading. Picard called after him. "Wait." He stopped. Who are you really? The stranger looked back. For the first time his face looked tired. My name was once Elias. Elias what? The man smiled. Just Elias. Then he disappeared. The architect remained. Picard looked upward. Are you going to leave? The architect answered. No. Picard's expression hardened. Then what do you want? The answer surprised him. To learn. Picard smiled faintly. That makes two of us. Suddenly Riker shouted. Captain? Picard turned. Another sensor alarm. What now? Riker stared at the readings. I've got a ship. Whose? Riker looked confused. It's ours? Picard frowned. The Enterprise? No. Then what? Riker enlarged the image. A ship appeared. Similar to the Enterprise. But larger. Older. More advanced. Its hull carried a strange insignia. A combination of Starfleet's Delta and the symbol of the first universe. Picard stared. The ship hailed them. A woman's face appeared. She looked human. But her eyes contained stars. Captain Picard. Picard stepped forward. Who are you? The woman smiled. I command the First Joint Fleet. Picard looked toward the separated universes. Between both realities? Yes. Then what do you need? The woman hesitated. We found something beyond the architect. Picard's expression tightened. What? She turned toward her sensors. Another universe. Strange immediately looked concerned. Another? She nodded. But this one is different. How? It isn't approaching us. Picard waited. Then what is it doing? The woman looked directly at him. Watching. Pause. And we've detected life inside it. Picard asked. What kind? The woman answered. Human. Picard's heart stopped. That's impossible. I know. From what universe? She shook her head. We don't know. Picard looked toward Superman. Superman stared back. The woman continued. But we've received a message. What message? She activated the transmission. A voice emerged. Yeah. Human. Terrified. Please? Static. Please don't open the door. Picard froze. The message repeated. Please don't open the door. The transmission ended. Then the woman spoke one final sentence. Captain, we didn't open it. Picard's blood ran cold. It opened itself. Behind the fleet, deep in the darkness between universes, a new door appeared. And this time, something on the other side was already reaching through.